Dr. ASPLEN, I find it interesting that the FSBA also, you were in the original pool of candidates when we hired Tom Bowden.
Not to consider 3 well-qualified candidates, but only 1 job.
Our first candidate, the first one on the rack, Dr. ASPLEN.
I am truly delighted to be here today and to see you all and to sit in this seat again.
Lay the groundwork on some of this. As you recall, I came on board August 10th, and I think it was August 11th is when we started having our professional development, our training, and we had to kind of stop that to back up and punt, so to speak, and just figure out what we were going to do. And part of what I decided to do was to create this equity committee.
I wanted to talk to you about a few things on the agenda. From what I've heard, Neola is writing policy across the state of Florida. One of the policies that they're working on is the one that's going to limit our First Amendment right to petition our government. I wanted to understand what the relationship is between Neola and the FSBA, which Ms. Goodwin used to be the president of.
In partnership with Equality Florida. And Neola down there at the bottom is our policy partner, and they make sure that we have equitable policies within our district that do follow state statutes.
I noticed you're leading the Neola conversation, so I wasn't quite sure about that. Are parents paying to have their First Amendment rights taken away? If you look at the policies across the state, they seem to be kind of like cookie cutter policies.
And so as we continue to talk about some of the things that we're doing, we have surveyed each one of the Florida school districts to gather information about those districts' policies and the procedures and the actions that they would be taking. Along with that, we've also asked for a toolkit that can be used to share information about the policies and provide a continuum, including assessments of where the districts are and the steps that need to be taken to move forward as we address equity in our counties.
I'm here to talk to you today about the purchase of Neola. I have to say that the reasons given by our board during the workshop for committing to purchase Neola, a program that costs almost twice as much as the program we already have, seems at best just disingenuous. Some of the reasons that we were given included using Neola's policy templates with a projected cost of $94,000 versus NEFEC, our current program that costs only $68,000, will require less hours of staff time. However, later in the conversation, we were told that not only would this still require staff hours, but it would also call for a new project management position to be created. Ms. Brown emphasized the importance of the program, insisting that we must ensure our policies are in compliance with state statutes.
And Neola down there at the bottom is our policy partner, and they make sure that we have equitable policies within our district that do follow state statutes.
Policy 2.27, Section 1 of the board policy regarding special committees states that all meetings of the school board committees shall be open to the public. This policy has not been observed by the Equity Committee, which has been operating in secret since its inception. Most people do not even know who is on this committee. The meeting minutes, well, those are confidential too. I have personally requested meeting minutes from Dr. Moore, and I was told that she could not publicly provide those meeting notes because what is contained within the minutes is just too complex for the rest of us to understand without their help.
And we now have just hired, we have a new superintendent. We have a new equity director who will start work on Monday, which we haven't had before. So I'm really excited about the changes and the things we're doing.
The last item is I just wanted to bring some clarity on the equity committee. I know I get some emails and I get phone calls, and I just want to make sure that we're clear and transparent. And so,
you know what else is missing from the school board agenda? Transparency. What is the equity committee up to, and why are they excluding the ESC children whose parents keep coming to every meeting begging the district for help?
And as you know, for a year now, that committee has been together talking and has created the equity plan.
Procedures don't have to go before a school board. Policies do. And so I say to school boards, remember that, because sometimes it might be easier to start with doing the work of training and doing some of that work with the schools and with the students and not bring as much to the school district, because we have a wide range of views from our community as to what work we should be doing. So I will leave it at that.
I was raised to believe that if you have to hide what you're doing, you probably shouldn't be doing it.
And as you know, over the year, they have met many times and have created the equity plan. I also was under the impression or told that it sounded like the committee was a secret committee, and I just wanted you to know it wasn't at all a secret committee. And
Florida is nationally recognized for its strong support for government in the sunshine. And this commitment is reflected in our state constitution. That being said, I'm having trouble reconciling the above statement with the lack of transparency regarding some of the policies and great thinking that's going on, and to quote one of your workshop panelists, behind the scenes. I'm also wondering why those that were actually elected to represent the people are not privy to what the people driving the policy are actually up to. When a board member asked if they would get a copy of the PIM plan being discussed during the workshop, the response was that they would get a Cliff Notes version. Why is that? I find it odd, given the sunshine laws, that the parents aren't also given access to these policy discussions or minutes from the meetings, especially when it will direct our policy affecting our children for the next 5 years. I also found it a bit odd that our equity committee that is developing other plans for our schools has also been secretly meeting. Where do we get the minutes for these meetings? And what are they doing? And what is their strategy? And why are we just getting this information when you're ready to vote on it, when this has been going on for months and months? What about government in the sunshine?
I was informed this week that that type of committee is one that should be in the sunshine, and I just didn't realize that.
So I would like to know, how can the community and most importantly parents gain access to these internal guidelines that govern what happens at school and outside of the sunshine? We are here because we have a problem with the policies on your agenda. As others have already articulated, equally so, we are here because of what is missing from our school district's agenda. Number one, academics. So we had a third grade reading level, which the third grade reading level, it indicates how well a student will perform for the rest of their academic career. Third grade test scores in Sarasota took a dip. They were only 66% of third graders scored a standard at reading at grade level or above. Sarasota's test scores were down 4% percentage points from 2019. Sarasota ranked 5th in the state, coming behind St. John's. They used to be like number 3, I believe. That's why we bought our house here. Third grade reading scores are considered the key indicator of a student's future success. As I reviewed your 2021 equity policy, what struck me most was the lack of any historical data supporting the creation of this committee. Essentially, Sarasota taxpayers are being asked to endorse an experimental ideological policy written by a largely secret committee who for the past 4 months failed to conduct the most basic research necessary for developing a successful strategy to close the achievement gap.
There are like 3 charges that I have, and they're big overall. One, of course, is addressing the achievement gap.
What was reported by our newly formed equity committee this morning, who strangely focused predominantly on strategies impacting high school students when data confirms that grades 1 through 3 are most crucial to determining future academic success, Sarasota County increased the achievement gap.
When we look at other districts that have implemented an equity committee, an equity policy, various strategies, particularly focused on trying to close that achievement gap, are you familiar with any success stories? Can you reference them?
Well, I think what I have found is a number of and I've been in touch with many in our state and even outside of our state. And interestingly enough, a lot of them are new.
This should not be surprising, given that all the data we have suggests that equity committees actually make the achievement gap worse. The Educational Opportunity Project at Stanford University has student test scores data available for virtually every school district in the country. The analysis presented here suggests that the existence of diversity officers in schools districts may actually exacerbate achievement gaps. In other words, diversity officers may be implementing counterproductive educational interventions. A simple comparison with achievement gaps in districts with and without diversity programs shows that gaps are larger in districts that employ these programs. In districts without a diversity programs, the average Black student is 1.9 grade levels behind the average white student on standardized test results. In districts with diversity programs, the achievement gap is half a grade level larger, with the average Black student being 2.4 grade levels behind the average white student. This pattern repeats itself for the white Hispanic and the non-poor poor achievement gaps. The gap between the average white and Hispanic student on standardized tests is 0.44, or nearly half grade level larger in districts with a diversity program than in districts without them. The gap between the average non-poor and poor students is 0.37 grade levels larger in districts with diversity programs than in those without them. I find the school board's approach to non-discrimination, well, a bit discriminatory. The process of picking and choosing which non-discrimination precepts to uphold based on which groups of people they are designated to protect from discrimination is in fact discriminatory. We cannot create an entire department for one group of people while ignoring our ESE students in the name of equity. It is hypocritical for our board to break the non-discrimination clause in Section 6 of the Department of Health Emergency Rule, segregating masked and unmasked students, then launch an entire program based on the non-discrimination statute. The non-discrimination clause referenced as the basis for founding your equity committee does not at all call for a committee to be created. It calls for data to be collected. Again, you would think that if the district was going to go beyond what the statute calls for, they would first gather data to determine the proper course.
Say, hey, what is the data telling us? What is the data telling us?
Lay the groundwork on some of this. As you recall, I came on board August 10th, and I think it was August 11th is when we started having our professional development, our training, and we had to kind of stop that to back up and punt, so to speak, and just figure out what we were going to do. And part of what I decided to do was to create this equity committee.
When we began to envision this panel weeks ago, George Floyd was alive in Minneapolis. Tony McDade had not been shot by police in Tallahassee. We began the planning in the aftermath of Ahmaud Arbery's killing by white vigilantes just 2 hours over the Florida border.
Could it be the forces behind the concept also subscribe to the notion that we can eliminate racism by employing more racism? Thank you.
Thank you.
And now this conversation comes as people have taken to the streets, where the brutality that is a common occurrence in Black neighborhoods is now on display for the entire nation and the entire world. America is at a crossroads. In the words of demographer James Johnson, we are a country in a demographic convulsion, a nation increasingly of Black and brown people, young Black and brown people, and older white people. And the shifting demographics have created a panic that expresses itself not only in the words and obvious actions of white supremacists, but also in the fear and discomfort and silence of white people who see that shift and wonder what it might be like to no longer be numerically the majority, but instead part of a pluralistic society, what it might mean to be a minority in a country that has not treated minorities well. So it was with that spirit that we began this. In this context, we think it is critical that the LGBTQ community be vocal and visible, unafraid to say the words white supremacy, unafraid to speak out to end the violence, state-sanctioned and hate-sanctioned, against the Black community, and to remember that this is our fight. We do not show up to it as allies, but we understand that our liberation, that our freedom is tied to ending this system.